open spaces, clear blue skies, the sun, the wind, a dry, harsh environment. These are the elements that have shaped a people for more than 3,000 years. This is Mongolia. In the heart of Asia, Mongolia lies between Russia and China, a windswept plateau bounded by the Gobi Desert to the south, the Siberian steppes to the north, and the Altai Mountains to the west. 2.4 million people inhabit this country, which is one-sixth the size of the United States. Some live in cities, towns, and hamlets, but most live as nomads, herders who move with their flocks of animals over the landscape from one pasture to another. The nomadic lifestyle means that all belongings must be moved several times a year, including the homes themselves. Every aspect of the culture shows the influence of this nomadic way of life, its economy and efficiency. The ancient survival skills needed to thrive in this harsh environment, wrestling, archery, and horsemanship, have developed into today's national sports. Everybody comes together at the annual festival, Nadam, to compete in these three sports. Although Mongolia appears very different from Western cultures, it does share many of the characteristics of the West. Today, after 70 years of communist rule, Mongolia is an independent country with a democratic government and capitalist economy. How did Mongolia become a democracy? Why did this country that is so isolated from the West take to democracy so fast and so easily? This exhibit is the story of Mongolia's long journey toward independence and democracy. Early inhabitants of Mongolia were loosely organized into family groups and tribes, living the nomadic way of life. Their lack of unity made them vulnerable to attack by neighboring peoples. Then, in 1162, a great leader was born who united the tribes and created the Mongolian Empire. This leader was Genghis Khan. The West remembers Genghis Khan as a ruthless marauder who burned cities and destroyed civilizations while capturing China, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, and Persia. But to his people, Genghis Khan was a fearless and strong leader who laid down the principles of democracy that remain at the heart of the nation 800 years later. Genghis Khan's empire eventually collapsed. In 1691, Mongolia submitted to the Manchu dynasty of China and remained part of that dynasty until the early 20th century. It then became a satellite of Soviet Russia, making Mongolia the second communist country in the world. All during this time, the principles of democracy that Genghis Khan had introduced lay dormant. When Mongolia broke free from Soviet control in 1990, Genghis Khan's democratic principles quickly re-emerged. Genghis Khan was born along the Onan River in present-day Henty province. By 1189, he had united the Mongolian tribes into one nation under his leadership. In 1206, the people proclaimed him Genghis Khan, or universal ruler. By uniting Mongolia into one independent nation, he cleared the way for self-rule, the primary condition for democracy. He was now ready to lay the foundation for democracy for his people by institutionalizing its basic principles. Modern democracy rests on four pillars, four principles that form the core or heart of democracy. These are participatory government, rule by law, equality of all citizens under the law, and personal freedoms. He created the Great Assembly, where Mongolian noblemen and commoners discussed policy and helped make decisions. One of the most important was whether or not to go to war. Genghis Khan also had a council of advisors, the Council of Wise Men. Acting as his cabinet, they helped him think through major decisions. With these two advisory bodies, Genghis Khan started Mongolia on the road to participatory democracy 9 years before the English barons forced King John to sign the Magna Carta, the beginning of democracy in the West. Genghis Khan developed a code of written laws. Called the Great Yasa, the laws were a combination of the Ten Commandments and Proverbs, and applied to everyone, no matter what their status in life. Genghis Khan also instituted a judicial system. By establishing rule by law, Genghis Khan created a legal system that allowed fair and just treatment of the Mongolian people. In this way, he erected the second pillar of democracy. Genghis Khan did much during his reign to encourage the equality of citizens. He selected army leaders for their proven ability in battle, their wisdom and loyalty, and not because of their noble birth. He believed that promotion should be based upon a person's actions and abilities, not his status in society. Meritocracy is one way of promising equality for all. Genghis Khan treated women with respect. There were several instances in which Genghis Khan sought the counsel of his wife and mother when making key decisions. By valuing women's opinions, Genghis Khan set a standard for the future emergence of equality for women in Mongolia. These two seeds would grow eventually into the third pillar of democracy. Genghis Khan granted his people some basic personal freedoms. He allowed a certain amount of freedom of speech so that he could listen to his people's opinions. He also advocated freedom of religion, encouraging people from many faiths to build temples and churches in his capital city, Harhoran. Genghis Khan's respect for personal freedoms are precursors of the fourth pillar of democracy. These four basic elements of democracy were part of Genghis Khan's governing principles. Yet Mongolia was not a true democracy when Genghis Khan ruled in the 13th century. The Mongolian people have only been able to practice Genghis Khan's principles in a truly democratic nation since June 1990, when Mongolians held their first free election after 70 years of communist rule. Mongolia is one of the most dynamic countries to emerge from communism because its people, nomads and city dwellers alike, are building a truly democratic society, embracing both the old traditions and modern global connections. By the 1960s, Mongolia was totally communist. Its economy and ideology had become dependent on Russia, isolating the people and severing connections with the rest of the world.
We didn't have any information about, well, not much information about any other country, so we couldn't travel outside that, so it was very isolated. One of the basic things in the Democratic Manifesto was we don't want one-party rule, we don't want Politburo to tell us what to do all the time. We want freedom of press, and we want freedom to travel.
People wanted to get back in touch with their ancient traditions, including Tibetan Buddhism. They desired the personal freedoms and human rights that Western nations offered. With the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989, Mongolians decided the time was right to abolish the communist regime. In December 1989, underground pro-democracy movements openly urged the citizenry to join them as they held numerous demonstrations in front of the National Parliament building.
My brother, Zorik, he was one of the main leaders of the pro-democracy movement. The demands of the pro-democracy young people have been increasing with every demonstration. During January 1990, a lot of international journalists and international press started coming.
Then, in early March, a few of the most dedicated protesters began a very public hunger strike that increased pressure on the communist government to resign.
Hunger strikes were very new to the Mongolian people and not part of Mongolian custom. To let someone be hungry is a very bad thing in Mongolia. But we didn't want to use guns, so we explained to the people that hunger strikes were the only peaceful way. This worked very quickly, and on March 7th, the first negotiations with the communist rulers took place.
I participated in the demonstrations almost every week. And in March of 1990, I took part in the hunger strike by assisting the strikers. My duty was to protect them by working with the Red Cross to monitor the health conditions of the hunger strikers.
To stop the hunger strike, the whole communist government resigned and cleared the way for free elections. And in June 1990, Mongolians voted for the first time in free multi-party elections for a new parliament.
After 300 years, Mongolians finally understood that they had a chance to become a truly independent, sovereign nation.
After electing a new parliament, the first task of the new government was to write a constitution that supported democracy and a free market economy. This document guaranteed human rights and included the blueprint for a multi-party political system.
In the new Mongolian constitution, human rights are fundamental and guaranteed for all.
Since 1992, Mongolia has been living under a democratic constitution. But it takes time to build a functioning democracy.
There is not enough recognition of women's political and social contributions to this society. Democracy is slowly progressing.
As a result of the revolution, the Mongolian government has been able to run state policy in its own way. The revolution has also given people the right to own property and freedom to choose how they wish to work.
I think today's Mongolia is a democratic country. You go outside and you are able to express your point of view, using press, using TV, mass media. It's a big success, I think.
If all Mongolians do everything they can for their country, our country will be wonderful. If the leaders of Mongolia cannot manage the country in the right way, our country won't be developed. I think it all depends upon our leadership.
My name is Akdensig, and I'm a high school teacher. When democracy came to Mongolia, it affected the whole nation. My personal life also changed. I now run a small business with my family, and so my earnings and my life are getting better and better. Under communism, everything was very limited. Mongolians did not know how to produce and work for themselves. Now, during democratic times, people are learning to work for themselves, and people's lives are improving, and many people have more money. Genghis Khan united all of Mongolia and created a great empire, and we are the children of Genghis Khan. That is why Mongolians are very brave and very active people. Genghis Khan was that way. Genghis Khan has given us a very good lesson. He showed that it is wise to be unified and to be in an independent country. With this wisdom, we will develop and progress. Genghis Khan's creation of a unified Mongolia has carried us to today.
I'm 28 years old. My family lives near the river. They are herders. This is the 5th year I'm taking care of animals, and before that I was in school. In the summer, the animals find food for themselves. They go to the mountain and they get fat. In the winter, it's much harder. You have to find a good place. There is a Mongolian proverb that says, "The happiness of man is untouched land." I feel the same. When I'm walking by myself in this beautiful land, I feel so proud. I'm the master of this land. I'm a Mongolian. Mongolian democracy changed the lives of Mongolians a lot. For example, they privatized the animals, and so they gave the animals to us and said, live with these animals. And that was kind of a new opportunity. I imagine my future life as a herder and the father of many kids. My hope is to have more animals and to buy a car and start a small business. I think I'm a descendant of Genghis Khan. I'm not sure if it's by blood, but I'm definitely a descendant. He's from the same region as I am.
My name is Erica, and I'm going to be 15 in November, and I'm in 8th grade. School days, I wake up at 7 a.m. and I have to be at the school at 8 a.m. and I am in the English class school. I come home around 2 p.m. and I just do my homework until 4. If there is time, I hang out with my friends until 5, and my father and mother gets back about 6. I write emails to my friends. My classmates are in France and America. I always, contact with them. Oh, I'm kind of hip-hop girl. Yes, Wu-Tang Clan is great. When I was a child, we didn't have many stores around the neighborhood, and we never had any good things to eat. Like Coca-Cola, we never know what it was. And now, if we have the money, just go on, and we have everything around here. I like to be free, like at school, we have the opportunity to say what we want to say. I think Mongolia is a democratic country because today everybody is free, they can do whatever they want.
My name's Pooji. I'm married and I have 2 sons. My oldest is 19. He's a second-year medical student studying in Russia. The younger one now studies in the States. During socialist times, there was no difference between the people. All were equal, but now we realize that people who work harder can make money. They can open their own business, and people who are lazy are just falling down. I opened a bar, so my business is a bar business. And now I'm able to pay for my children's school. I also started a construction business in 1994. My wife's a dentist, and now she has her own private dental practice. I am quite happy and satisfied with my life today. Thanks to democracy, I reached all of this.
I'm a primary school teacher. My parents were herders, and I grew up in the countryside. There are 4 people in my family: myself, my husband, my daughter in the 4th grade, and my son in kindergarten. I'm very close to my children. I like to spend as much time as I can with them. The endless skies and open spaces influence the character of Mongolian people. Since the land is really open, people are really open themselves. There's a timelessness to the Mongolian land that I like. Even though Genghis Khan lived in the 13th century, he is still alive and lives among us in our hearts and in our spirits. Every Mongolian knows him quite well, and we are very proud that Genghis Khan is ours. My name is Jambi. I'm 67 years old. I have lived in the countryside all my life. I raised 6 children. I have made many good dells. The dell is a Mongolian national costume like the one I am wearing. I also sew for my husband and children and grandchildren. I have written several poems about a mother and dedicated my poems to my children and grandchildren. I tell them about life. If I just told them, they would not listen or remember. But if I tell them in a poetic way, I think it will remain in their hearts much longer. During the communist times, my life was restricted, but good. Communism has given a lot of good things to Mongolia, such as my children's education. My husband received many awards for work as the head of a farmers' cooperative. Since the democratic revolution, there have been many changes. Now everything is available in every store. I think in the future things will be good for Mongolia.
모던도